I am Emmy Louie, and you're listening to the Emmy Louie Show, and you are listening to a show that talks about feng shui and architecture and related topics. This show is mainly for you to ask questions. I want you to, after you're listening to the show, is to ask questions about what we're talking about. It's not just a show for you to be given information and to accept it as it is. And so really it's to create a dialogue about all of these different topics. And here we have today the topic is about debunking organizing myths with Susan Sabo. And before I introduce my guest today, I want to say a special thank you to the International Feng Shui Guild, as well as the Feng Shui Institute International, and to the American Institute of Architects, as well as the American Institute of Architects Triangle Chapter, because through all of these organizations that I've belonged to, I have gotten contacts for this show, for all of these upcoming shows. And so without the help of these organizations, I would not have been able to meet these people face-to-face and bring you the shows, the people for these shows. So I really want to extend my gratitude to these organizations. And so our guest today is Susan Sabo. She is a professional organizer, and she leads organizing workshops for corporations, including Vanguard, GlaxoSmithKline, and Comcast. Susan Sabo appeared on HGTV in the show called Mission Organization. And welcome, Susan Sabo.
Thank you. Good to be here, Emmy.
Thank you, Susan. So you have for us, which is a very interesting topic because it's organizing myths. So we're going to talk today about debunking organizing myths.
Yes,
tell me about it.
Yeah, it's a great way to start the year, which is right where we're at, Emmy, because a lot of people are not organizing, and they're full of clutter and frustration because they're not organized. And right in line with your focus on feng shui, one of the primary things that feng shui advocates is clearing the clutter. So we're going to talk about why people are not clearing the clutter and try to get them over the hump and ready to start.
That's great. That's great. So what is your first tip on one of the big organizing myths?
Well, the first myth I'd like to address is one that comes up repeatedly, and that is some people are born with an organizing gene, and the rest of us will never be organized. I think that is like saying that everybody is born with the ability to read or the ability to play golf. It's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Organizing is a set of skills. Now, some people will learn those skills easier and earlier, just like reading or playing a game, and other people will have to be instructed and learn it over a longer amount of time. So it's really a set of skills.
It's interesting because there are some people, I heard something about some Enneagram, I think it's called an Enneagram, where it's a type of personality where they are, I guess, they like to hog things, and it's a personality type. Can you address, or is it harder for those type of people that just hog things and they just want to keep everything, they don't want to throw everything out?
Sure, it is harder for people who have a personality trait that gets them to want to keep everything. In working with clients, as I do one-on-one, I find often that they're keeping things because either they're not able to decide whether they really will need it, and sometimes whether they really will like it, and often it has to do with their background. If they came from an environment where everything had to last a long time, usually an environment where they didn't feel like they had very much stuff in particular, they can compensate for that now that there's an abundance of things in their life, and they have an abundance, but they don't know how to get rid of things because early on you never got rid of anything, including the bags that the groceries came in. So it is a personality challenge, but like many challenges, with the right tools, with maybe some good coaching, and a different mindset, they can begin to get organized.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I went into one of my consultations. It was an office, and one of the partners in the office, all of his papers were on the floor, and that was the way he worked. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really amazing. How could you organize? How could you even work with all your papers on the floor? What if a dog came in, or what if there was a flood or something and the roof leaked? And, I was just amazed that, I would think that something like that would be sort of illegal.
Well, I suppose in some places it would be a fire hazard, especially if they were high piles. But some people, you might consider somebody like that visual. They feel like they need to look around in order to be able to see the things that they have. But, Emmy, well-labeled folders standing up on end in a rack are just as easy to get used to and identify visually instead of having to have these things spread out all over the floor. Often that's just because they never thought of the alternative. I've had a lot of clients say, oh, that's easy. It's just that they didn't think of it. So it's a way to look at things differently is important. So somebody who might be listening and hear that about this client of yours and say, oh, well, that's me, except my issue is some other kind of thing, maybe children's toys even. What I suggest is that they ask somebody from outside to give them a suggestion.
Well, what I think is interesting is these people that they have piles and piles everywhere, and their justification is that I am already doing my work, so what's the problem? Is that true or not?
So you're saying that
if these people, they have all these stacks, and they have these stacks on the floor, and they say, well, I'm doing my work productively, so what's the problem with that?
Oh, okay. A lot of times people that have piles tell me that they are organized, and they can find everything. The truth is, what I have seen is when we're cleaning up those piles, they will say more than once in a day, wow, so this is where that document is, or wow, I haven't seen this thing for a while. So they think they know everything that's in those piles, but the reality as we're working together comes out, and that is that they don't really know. And the whole thing with being organized is the ability to find things. It's not about having things look tidy necessarily. It's about being able to retrieve things that you've kept.
That is true, because when I start to not being able to find something, then that's when I start organizing everything.
Right.
Whether it's it was something where I had a DVD player for my daughter, and we couldn't find the cord for the DVD player. And I said, well, we can't find it, but it must be here somewhere. And so now we decided, okay, we're going to organize and clean up our daughter's bedroom. And so that is one signal for me to start organizing. What is the next myth?
Well, one of the big myths, is that you should touch everything only once. Some people have heard the acronym OHIO, which stands for Only Handle It Once. And I'll say that's true in the case of junk mail, but in practically everything else, it usually has to be touched twice or three or more times, depending on the type of item it is. And let me give you a little example. Let's say that you're tidying up the kitchen, and so you find a book that belongs in your office. So because you're following this rule that you should only handle it once, you get up, you go to your office, you put it on the bookshelf, you come back to the kitchen. Hopefully you didn't get distracted, and now you find some bills that need to be paid. So because you're going to handle these bills only once, you're going to stand up, go to the office, put it on the desk, and pay the bills. Otherwise you're going to handle them twice. And then you're going to go back to the kitchen. By now time has really elapsed, and chances are you actually got distracted.
Mm-hmm.
And this only handle it once is defeating your objective, which is really, let's get the kitchen working really well.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Great.
well, and wouldn't you say in most homes, the kitchen is the hub of activity?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have one more minute, and we're going to elaborate on this because I've heard this Ohio, a few times. And we are talking with Susan Sabo, professional organizer, and this is Louie on the Louie Show, and we are talking about debunking organizing myths. And you can visit me on my website. It's www.emmylouie.com. I am Louie, and you are listening to the Louie Show, and we are talking here with Susan Sabo, professional organizer. And we were talking about Ohio, which is only handle it once, and it has to do with debunking organizing myths. So, Susan, tell me about that last story about the kitchen and the book.
Well, I was saying how a lot of times only handling it once actually clogs us up and it distracts us and it gets us off track of what our goal actually is. And the remedy that for handling things only once, which causes us to move around a lot and to change topics a lot, is to actually group things as we encounter them. Let's say you're tidying up that kitchen and there are things that belong in each of the kids' rooms and the office. What I suggest is having an expanding folder or a box, and as you identify that things belong in each child's room or your office, you just put things in that folder. And then make one trip out and deliver the folders to the appropriate rooms, and you've made one trip. Instead of focusing on handling things once, you focused on consolidating and getting the project done.
Yes, you know what's interesting about what you're saying about the only handle it once myth is very interesting because I have this bill that I don't want to pay yet, so I've actually handled it over 15 times.
Wow!
because it's due in mid-January, so I got the bill like about a month ago. I got the bill in November, and this bill is due 2 months later.
Yeah.
And so I keep on putting it in my inbox at the bottom of my inbox because I know I'll see my inbox. So what are your thoughts about that, like a bill that you don't want to pay until the very end?
Yeah, 3 things. First of all, yay, bravo, do not pay bills until they're due because that way you're earning the interest on your money until the day you pay it. And then I would suggest that you explore 2 things, Emmy. Number 1 is setting yourself a reminder in your calendar. Hopefully your calendar is your computer, but if it's on paper, that's okay. And go to 2 weeks before the due date and write yourself a note to pay that particular bill. The other thing to explore is automatic bill payment where you can schedule the payment. Maybe your bank offers that. Maybe your credit card offers that. Maybe even this company will withdraw it from your checking account on a schedule. So all you need to do is set up the payment as soon as you go to your first time bill paying after you received it and schedule that payment on the date that you want it to go out, and then you're free. You file your receipt or you throw out the receipt and move on, and you won't have to.
That's a great idea about the write it in the organizer.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful idea, and I don't believe that I didn't think about that. I think I don't know why. Maybe I just want to see that bill for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy. And now that I think about it, another thing, a reaction based on what you just said about Ohio, only handle it once, is someone gave me a gift, and it's a large wagon. And have you ever used anything? Do you know of people that use a wagon around their house?
Oh, you mean you collect things up and then you drag it around behind you and you deliver things?
Yes.
Well, I have heard of people doing that, and that helps you not to have to go back and forth between rooms, for example, because you just use it like a cart that might deliver your room service. You know, you can pile everything on it and then deliver plates or deliver these boxes of things to the different rooms in your house. I live in a 3-story townhouse, and that would be very difficult in my environment, but I could see it working for some.
Yes, and I don't think I would have that much of a problem. I wouldn't think I would need a wagon, but it's because of my daughter.
Right.
And some kids, I don't want to speak about my daughter, but I know some kids, if they see something that is nice and neat, their duty is just to mess everything up. And so you might find something in one room which is supposed to be there, but it might be in the opposite end of the house, and that's why the wagon has worked for me.
Good. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, the wagon has worked.
We just talked about putting something in your calendar, and a myth that links into is that by having the right portfolio, the right organizer, the right calendar, or the right container, I'll be organized. And that's a myth.
That is a myth? Tell me about that.
Well, just because maybe you have a shovel and a rototiller, you're not a gardener. If we own a piano, we're not necessarily going to be able to play Chopin. Or if we have a new set of golf clubs, we're not going to be able to play like Tiger Woods. So that's all the tools. An organizer, a great calendar, or the right plastic containers are simply the tools. And you need to know how to use the tools in order to become the pianist or the gardener or the great golfer.
So what are some of the common things that people need to know about how to use these tools? Are there some obvious ones?
Well, the thing, what I would suggest to anybody who's listening is to look on the websites of the people who provide those tools. And it doesn't matter whether it's Franklin Covey or Rubbermaid or any of the other providers. They usually have tips for using their tools. And that's a great, free, easy-to-access source. There are also books available in the self-help section of the library and of the bookstore, of course. And one thing I want to suggest is some people, just like you just said, I never thought about that with scheduling your payment.
Yes.
Consider using a professional organizer or a coach.
Yes.
Our job is to know lots of different options for accomplishing any particular goal. And as a coach, our job is to bring out the best in you in the method that works best for you. So as a professional organizer, we ask a lot of questions to try to get familiar with you and your way of operating, your personality type like you mentioned earlier, and then make suggestions about methods and routines and tools that would allow you to be as productive as you want, as organized as you want, and honestly, as happy as you want, because getting free of the things that bog us down, which is clutter of our time, clutter of our space, clutter of our life. You know, how many people are like, I just have so much to do. So,
I have to admit, I want to talk about myself, actually, because I had this organizer come over, and I didn't know how to deal with my daughter as far as, she's just a child. I mean, children just want to, they want to scatter everything, and they have a room, and everything's in a disarray. And so the organizer suggested that I bring up from my basement these plastic containers, and I put all her toys in there, and I did, and I labeled them. And then she said something behavioral that I actually don't like to do, the organizer told me that I needed to tell my daughter every night to clean up, when actually that's not my behavior. Okay. Isn't that strange?
Yeah. Well, what we find as professional organizers that if we help people develop routines, then if they follow that routine, it makes organizing easier. You might draw a parallel to losing weight. If somebody gets in the routine of having a snack that's a piece of fruit instead of a piece of candy, they're starting to move towards a healthier diet. And probably her suggestion was to help you guys create a routine so that it's an automatic part of your day. And if that,
yes, I think one of the issues here is that I compared to other mothers, I'm not, quote unquote, strict in that sense. I think that's what it was. It's like how, because in the previous show, my show, the guest said that I'm in control of my children. And what do you think about that statement?
About you being in control of your children?
That's correct. That parents are in control of their children and their children's mess.
That sounds like a parenting myth to me.
A parenting myth? Okay, let's talk about that parenting myth.
Well, here's what I think.
Because I want to get something out of this show myself.
Well, the reality is you are the key trainer of your child. And you are going to give her skills or not give her skills that will serve her throughout her life. And I have to say, in almost every profession, when people are successful, it's because they have some form of organization, of making promises and following through on those promises, of having a way.
We have one more minute.
Okay.
Susan. Yeah, so we'll just finish that one sentence.
Sure. Well, you are going to help your daughter be the best she can be, and you don't have to control her, but you do need to contribute to her future success.
Okay. And we'll continue on with about being a key trainer for your child. And we are here with Susan Sabo. She is a professional organizer, and you are listening to the Louie Show. And Susan, how can people reach you?
They can reach me at susan@organizersinc.com or go to www.productivitycafe.com.
So we're back with Susan Sabo, professional organizer. And Susan, you were talking about being a key trainer for your child.
Yes, that's what I was saying, Emmy, because it's your influence on your daughter at a very young age, and it doesn't matter daughter or son, any child is going to be long-lasting, and you can contribute to habits that will serve them well all the way through their career. So I agree that you need to parent your child whatever way is best in your evaluation. I would urge you to consider the long-term impacts of some of the skills you do and don't give to your child. And one that I find serves a lot of people well is returning things to the place you found them. Because the opposite of that is what causes clutter and stress. And an example of that is your car keys. A lot of people lose their car keys every single day or every other day.
Yes.
And if a person can get in the habit of always putting their keys on a hook inside the door as soon as they get in the house, this problem it's only a problem because it causes them stress or causes them to lose time or causes them to be late. This problem could be avoided by the habit of putting things in a particular place regularly. And I think that's a lot easier to instill in somebody in that learning mode, generally under 12 years old, than to say at age 16 when you start driving, or maybe 26 when you own your first car, that now you have to start this habit of putting your keys in a regular spot. And a tip for you with children is that you want to start young, probably before your kids can even read. So if something belongs in a particular place, cut out a picture of what belongs there.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, and I also suggest you put the letters that spell the name of that thing, because they'll learn both at the same time. Even though they can't read, it doesn't mean that they're not learning.
I think that's a wonderful suggestion. That makes the show.
There you go.
That's enough. That's great. The car keys, I feel proud of myself because I don't think I've ever lost car keys in my life. One statistic here, or it's a quotation from this book called Crazy Busy by Edward M. Hollowell. And it says here, the amount of data and items people have to remember and organize today exceeds what it has ever been before in history. What looks like forgetfulness derived from a neurological problem is really fungodomia, forgetfulness derived from data overload. And what looks like a tendency to lose things based on some kind of brain decay is really lusophilia, a tendency to lose things based on the fact that a person has more things to keep track of than a normal human brain can manage. And so the solution to both fungodomania and lusophilia are to add structure to the environment, and that is from Crazy Busy, the book.
Good.
And do you know people that what is the average? Do you know what's the average amount of times people have lost car keys or anything like that? Is there a statistic on that?
I don't have a statistic, but I will tell you that most people spend at least 30 minutes per day looking for something. Now, it might not be their keys. For some people, it is the keys, but in some place, it could be a form that they need to fill out, and they don't remember where they placed it. They're on their way to the doctor. They need to get out a prescription that was sent by or referral maybe. They don't know where they put that. The other day, I was with a client looking for the deed to his house that was paid off in 1992, and it took an hour and a half of searching to determine it actually wasn't there. So,
what I think is interesting about that is this something that people like to play out as a drama? Spending 30 minutes a day looking for things. Because I noticed that for my father, and I don't want to. I already said that my father already, but taxes are going to be due in April, and every year he waits till the last minute to file his taxes. And what's going on with that? Are people, they just love, it's the excitement of losing something and then finding it, or what's going on with that?
Well, a lot of people will tell me that they like to work on a deadline, and so what I suggest is you set that deadline early, whatever it is. If you're somebody that has to be working on a deadline and something is due April 15th, reset your own deadline and stick to it. You really have to stick to it. That's one of those skills, one of those habits you need to do, which is create your deadline, what works for you, and stick to it, just like putting your keys in the same place all the time.
Yes, that's, the key thing, since I don't have a problem with that, I have another question for you, and this is in one of my feng shui consultations. I had a client that had a 4-level house. Mm-hmm. So they had 2 levels, they had an attic, and then they had a basement. So that's 4 levels.
Yep.
And they actually had a male problem. I'm not talking about female-male problem. I'm talking about M-A-I-L, male problem.
Right. And so you're asking me what the solution might be?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the number one, there are actually 2 steps that I advocate right out of the box. Number 1 is to stop getting lots of mail. And on my website, organizersinc.com, if you click on the header that says Tips and Facts, on the left-hand side there's a link to the Direct Marketing Association. And this is one of the ways you can stop getting so much mail, and that's to opt out of getting mails that are just sent to you because you bought something from somebody else. Number 2 is that they should get an inbox. And I don't mean one of those plastic trays that are 2 inches tall and doesn't have sides. What I mean is a honking big box.
They do. They actually do. It's like when you go out for vacation and then you get like the U.S. mailboxes. They actually have that because two of these people are professionals. They're like lawyers, so they get a lot of mail, like real estate agents. They just get a lot. They just get inundated with mail. And the issue was, where are they going to take? When they get the mail, how does that whole mail system flow through the house? That's my question. And and what was happening was that the daughter might get the mail at the mailbox, but depending on where she was coming, she might put the mail in the front door. But if the father got the mail, he would come from the car and he would put it in the basement, and then it was just so crazy.
Well, this goes back to what I call standard organizing procedures. In the military, something similar to this would be called standard operating procedures, SOPs. And so they need to create a standard organizing procedure for the mail. And they might need two boxes, one by the front door and one by the main door. Most people come in out of the garage. And then there's the routine or the procedure that mail is always put into those big-in boxes right by the door.
So are you saying that it shouldn't be changed, these standard operating procedures? Is that what you're saying?
Something needs to change because otherwise I wouldn't have a problem.
So, yeah, something has to change. Right? It's just, it was crazy. It was crazy, like the mail going through the basement, and then they really sort their mail, at the kitchen and all that. Actually, where would people sort their mail? Most people.
Yeah, see, what I think I'm hearing, Emmy, is that you have the beginning of a procedure. This client has the beginning of a procedure, but not the whole procedure. So it gets in the house, but that's just step one. Step two is, where do we look through the mail? And then step three would be, where do we handle the mail? Take care of paying bills, review magazines or professional periodicals, that kind of thing.
So we have 2 more minutes. So what you said is, where do you take in the mail? Mm-hmm. Number 2 is where you sort it, and then number 3 is where you actually look through it. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, handle it or process it is what we
process it.
Right.
Process it as in you're talking about, if you have to pay that bill.
If you have to pay that bill, right, or if you need to sign a child's consent form that they can go on a field trip, or maybe there's a stack of professional journals that come in, and you want to put those in a separate pile to read at your leisure instead of things that need to be taken care of on a deadline.
So, so you're talking about 3 separate spaces then. You're talking about 3 separate activities.
Well, and that's why it's a procedure. Otherwise it would be an action. An action is one step and done. This is a procedure where one thing follows the other. For example, if you were getting a tooth filled at the dentist, there's a procedure. First, you want to get numb, and then you want the filling done. You don't want to have it go the other way around.
I think it's so awesome, just what you said. I love it. I totally love it. And here we are with Susan Sabo, professional organizer, and I'm loving what we are talking about today. And we're talking about debunking organizing myths with Susan Sabo, and you are listening to Emmy Louie. And I really want to thank all of you for listening. Talking about standard operating procedures about mail, and I think it's so interesting, Susan, that you said the part about the action.
Yeah,
is there anything else?
Well, the thing I would suggest to the listeners is don't think of doing the mail as just bringing it in from the mailbox. It's what path it follows from the mailbox into the house, through the house, and importantly, back out, because otherwise you end up with clutter. And along with our energy with feng shui, we want to keep things moving.
Yes, and so let's just say, let's track that bill that we were talking about, and we talked about because I think one of the issues why, at least for me, why I would want to keep something is I don't know if this piece of mail is actually important
Uh-huh.
or if it's actually junk mail, right? And so I sort that out, and, okay, let's just find out that, okay, it's a bill. And what are some of the issues relating to the outgoing process?
Well, a lot of the times it is that question, because the two ways that things can leave our property, whether it's our cubicle, our office, our home, is it can go out in the trash, which is what I recommend most often, or it can go out as return mail as a reply or a check that we're sending out. So it is really important, Emmy, to learn a couple of rules that go along with our standard operating procedure about what to keep. And the two most important questions somebody needs to ask is if there's a legal and tax consequence to this piece of paper in their hand, whether it's estate planning or paying your bills. Paying an electric bill is not something that you need to keep. There's no tax or legal consequence unless you're writing it off as a business expense. And then
Yes.
That's number one. Number two is am I going to use this for sure in the next couple of months? If you are, keep it. If you're not, toss it. Because in today's internet era, chances are you can get a duplicate of it if you have to. There's a way to research whatever that is on the internet, or there's somebody that you can call if you need it. The ultimate question is, what's the worst thing that would happen if I get rid of this?
Yes.
Most
You
often,
just get another one maybe.
Yeah, at worst case.
In the mail.
Well, yeah, then you're really glad you threw it away right away. But I urge people to make a big effort to stop even receiving that stuff.
Yeah.
Here's a really cool rule, too, Emmy. If you're pretty satisfied with the way that your house is and how much clutter you have, or maybe you do a little bit of decluttering so that you're more organized, a great rule is if something stays, something goes. So one thing in, one thing out. It could be true if you get a new piece of clothing, you get a new sweater, one sweater has to go out. It's a bargain you make with yourself to keep balance. Balance is just right up there at the top of the list with being decluttered. So one piece of paper in, another piece of paper out. One new book in on the bookshelf, one old book out. And please recycle, repurpose, and reuse. So while it's going out, only make it trash if there isn't somebody else that can use it.
What is the next myth?
Well, the final myth that we probably have time for is that someone can get organized in a day or a weekend. That's a myth because the reality is organizing is an ongoing process. It's continual. It's just like eating healthfully. You can stop eating healthfully for the holidays maybe, but you need to get right back on healthful eating. Otherwise, the consequences are putting on the pounds. Just like maintaining organization and keeping decluttered, as long as you maintain organization and keep decluttering on an ongoing basis, you won't ever have a clutter issue. So being organized is an ongoing thing. It's not something you do one day and then you're done forever.
I had a question. There's another question that just popped into my mind because what do organizers do? Because I talked to several organizers, and some people say that they just tidy up things, and some people actually recommend closet systems. And some, tell me the whole range of different organizers.
I'll first refer you to the source. The National Association of Professional Organizers has a website. It's napo.net, and you will see that the range of what people specialize in ranges from closet organization to estate planning to paper flow in corporate offices. So we all have different specialties and different emphasis. And if you're thinking of using a professional organizer, you need to find out what their specialty is so that it matches with what your needs are.
Yeah, and I know you said the napo.net, but how do you actually find out? I mean, what if you bump into these organizers and I say, well, what do you actually do? Do you ask that?
Sure, you can ask that. You would say, what's your specialty? A similar way to think about it is maybe a CPA. As some accountants specialize in small business accounting. Some specialize in corporate accounting. Some specialize in tax preparation. And you would not go to a corporate accountant if you needed to have your taxes done. You want somebody who specializes in taxation. So you would ask an organizer, what's your specialty? Or what's the focus of your business? Or,
and tell me again, what are the different specialties? I'm sorry, just tell me again.
In the National Association of Professional Organizers, it goes the range from organizing kids to time management workshops all the way to large corporate paper management issues like archiving things that are legal and required to be kept. Some people specialize in bathrooms, some people in kitchens, some people in kids organization. Some of the organizers specialize in helping people with ADD. So the range is as
What
varied.
about if you're just starting off and you've never worked with an organizer? Can any organizer help you?
No. Again, like if in my case, I have a real strong corporate background, so working with professionals who have to balance work and home life, for example, is right up my alley. But if someone asked me to organize their garage, well, that's just a secondary, the skills I have apply to a garage, but somebody who does garages day in and day out is going to help you better.
Okay. Now I'm understanding that. And the thought that I forgotten, now I remembered, is that in Feng Shui, having a lot of clutter is called overwhelming qi. So the energy of it is just so heavy that you're not able to move on with your life. And so that is how clutter relates to Feng Shui. And I wanted to tell all of you that because I forgot it earlier. And so we are with Susan Sabo, and we have just a minute left, and I want to thank you, Susan, for being on the show. You did really well. I just love your tips and everything, and you actually helped me change one of my habits and all that, so I really thank you for that.